one, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other command greater than these. Then the scribe said to him, you are right, teacher. You have correctly said that he is one, and there is no one else except him. And to love him with all your heart, with all your understanding, with all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself is far more important than all the burnt offerings and sacrifices. When Jesus saw that he answered intelligently, he said to him, you are not far from the kingdom of God, and no one dared to question him any longer.
Right, and I'm gonna read the passage in John, which is a little bit different. So in the Gospels, these three that we have read so far have a very similar narrative. But in chapter 13 of John, and I'm going to start in 34. So now I'm giving you a new commandment. Love each other, just as I have loved you. You should love each other. Your love for one another will prove to the world that you are my disciples. And so it's a beautiful thing when you're talking about purpose and having one purpose as a body of believers to be able to look at something that we are commanded and confirmed by God, by Jesus, in all four Gospels. And that is referenced from Deuteronomy, from Moses before he left the people when they went through to the Promised Land. And so I think that we can all have an assurance that if we're looking for a purpose, we were given one. We were given a pretty solid purpose. So let's look at the word love in this context. So the word love in this context is an agape love. In the New Testament, agape is used over 200 times. And what agape love represents when you're talking about the type of love, it's a divine or selfless love, an unconditional love. I really didn't see that until Jesus came on the scene, because it is a divine love, and it's something that he showed to us. I was listening to a prominent minister, and he was giving a talk about agape love, and he was talking about the fact that we only have agape love to be able to give to God because we cannot necessarily give him anything. So it is a selfless, unconditional love. And I had to chew on that a little bit, because I thought about, well, we do have works, we have faith, we have obedience to give to him, but he loved us before we did any of that. He loves us now. And so the type of love that he bestowed to us, and still does today, is that unconditional agape love. And that is what he intends for us to give others, which is one of the more difficult passages in Scripture, I think. And that moves us to our next phase. So we have our one mind, okay? So as we talk about wisdom and we talk about our theme for the lectureship, and I know a lot of times we talk about men, but we're a group of women, so we're also going to say the wisdom of women, and wanting to be wise and wanting to be able to steer our communities in the right direction towards our right purpose. Then we look at that one purpose. We were told to love the Lord your God. Like I said, very concise. All four Gospels referenced from the Old Testament. Very clear directive. And so what does that mean from a practical application? And I'd like to spend the remainder of the time on the practical application of what does it mean when we love the Lord your God? Well, it's reciprocal. Because if you love the Lord your God, you're going to love your neighbors. And it goes back to the top, because you're going to love the Lord your God. It's a reciprocal relationship. And I put up here "For the One," because when I was studying for this lesson, Sargent, one of my cousins, introduced me to a song called "For the One," and I would highly recommend that you go out and listen to it. It is a phenomenal song. And it's about, in the lyrics, talking about your path to compassion and kindness, and what it looks like to just find the one. And talking a little bit about God nods. in the year 2024, our church has been trying to do one thing, or we focus on one thing a year. So in the year 2024, we focused on equipping. And we as ladies ministry team did not know that that was going to be the theme for the year when we chose our lesson, which was, and I've got it down here, let me not knock off all my Bibles. It was another Cassandra Martin book that I would recommend. And it is Everything You Need, a promise for women of God who want to be it all and do it all for Him. And it was about finding your equipped space in the church. And we all kind of laughed when the 2024 announcement. We were like, well, I guess we planned it together. We're just going to tell people we planned it together and we coordinated with the leaders. And so same with me today. I kind of laughed a little bit because when you look at the reciprocal phase, you talk about equipping. And I want us to read 2 Peter 1:3, which is one of those hard scriptures in the Bible. It's easy to read, difficult to put into practice. Does anybody have it?
Knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days scoffers walking after their own lust. Is that
I don't think
What
that
is
I
that?
gave the right one. Give me a second. That is
1-3?
not
No,
the
I
right one.
reversed it. I did 3-1.
Okay.
Today,
It's okay.
we've written down all sorts of things. Okay, 1-3. Let's see. One more page over here, read. Okay. According as His divine power hath given unto us all things that pertain unto life and godliness through the knowledge of Him that hath called us to glory and virtue.
So that we have been given all things. So when we look at loving our neighbors and going through that process, we have been given everything that we need. And that's a little overwhelming. I know that's a very easy thing to read. And we give some head shakes. Do y'all have some feelings when you've been told that you have everything that you need? When you're sitting in a study with someone, because I don't always feel like I have everything that I need. I don't always feel like when I'm sitting down with someone and I will tell you, trying to explain talking at a lectureship to my coworkers was a super fun endeavor. I think I finally, because they kept saying, well, is it a conference? And I said, no, it's a lectureship. And it was a really interesting endeavor. You know what? It was an opportunity for me to talk to my coworkers about my faith, but I didn't always feel equipped. I didn't always feel like I had everything I need to be able to have that conversation with them. And to be able to love our neighbors the way that we need to, and to show the love of God to our neighbors, we have to be equipped to have those conversations with our community. To be able to be of one purpose, to be of one mind, to be able to steer our communities in the right path with wisdom, we have to be able to be equipped in that space. Now, again, another God touch. The next step would be to multiply. So our theme for 2025 is to multiply. And I will tell you, one of the things that our leadership has challenged us with is for every member of our congregation to bring one person to Christ this year. Which, is kind of what we all kind of said too. But isn't that what we are charged to do? Isn't that our charge? And the fact that we all kind of sat in pews and went, "Whew, that's a big ask." Well, it's our ask as Christians. And I think that was telling in of itself. The fact that we all felt a sense of anxiety with that challenge says that maybe we were not putting into practice some of these foundational truths for one purpose, one mind that we should have. So we have, let's see, we've got about 10 minutes left in class, and I want us to spend some of this time talking about, from a practical perspective, some of the things that we can do in our communities to show love. Some of the things that we can do in our community as Christian women to bring people to Christ, to multiply. And what does that look like to each of you? And I would love to hear and learn from each of you some of the concepts that you would bring to the table. So I'm going to leave it out for a minute, and who would like to speak? I'll bring you the mic.
I just saw an illustration on Facebook, and it said the limb that bears the most fruit bows the lowest. So it kind of hit me. Am I in love? Maybe not.
I like that concept. That's a great visual. Other things that people would like to add?
I think the more you do those kinds of things, approaching people or just being asked a question, the more it happens to you, the easier it is. I've been around people who were very at ease in a conversation, but I tend to feel like I might not have everything I need. I'm not as comfortable as I should be, so maybe I'm not doing it often enough.
Or we're allowing Satan's self-talk to tell us we don't have what God has already told us that we have and need, because he's equipping us for those conversations. What else?
I also think it's easy when you feel like you are in your adulthood as a Christian and you think, this is my talent, this is what I'm giving to my church. And there are people who are excellent teachers, but there are also people even at our church that I am thinking of right now who are wonderful evangelists. Like, they just seem to have it. Whatever it is, connecting with strangers, connecting with people, getting on their level, doing it in love, doing it kindly, like whatever it is, they seem to have it. And like, well, that's their job. That's their talent, is being an evangelist, but that's all of our job. We all have that title, but we find it in our community, whatever our community is, the people we interact with, whatever our talent is, we still have to find that rhythm for ourselves. So it's so easy to put that, like, that's their, that they're good at that. I'm not good at that. They are, but we are all charged with finding what's going to work for us and the people we interact with, and it's just something to be mindful of. And it's so easy to let opportunities pass, but when they pass, learn from it. Think, I could have, God, next time put that on my heart in that moment. Don't let me think of it after. Put it on my heart in that moment to be bold and to trust that you're going to guide that conversation, and it's not going to be on me to fumble through it alone.
One of the things I actually had in my notes is one of the things that we kind of have been challenged with in this conversation of Multiply by our leaders is who in your circle, your very close circle, is not where they need to be. And it's hard. That is a hard discussion that you have to have with yourself. But that's who we are responsible for. I think sometimes we get into a theoretical type situation where we think we have to save the community. Well, our community is our circle. And they're the people that we have the ability to influence. And that's typically the hardest individuals to have conversations with. And I think that's why we push back. Like talking about the coworker situation. Those are people I spend more time with than my family. And so they know me very well. And I'm the one that has the opportunity to have those conversations. So it's not for somebody else. It's for me. That's my job. And I would challenge everyone in the room to think about those people, because I think we all have those individuals in our life, be it family, close friends, neighbors, individuals that it's just hard to have the conversation. It's awkward. It's an awkward situation to have the conversation. But it's a conversation that's needed, and it's one that we're called to, and it is our purpose to be able to bring those individuals to Christ.
I think the hard part is getting the conversation started. I don't always know how to approach people.
It is not easy. It is not easy. And I think that sometimes we get really rusty in the way that we walk through it. I've been so grateful for the last year because one of the things that we kind of admitted as a church family is we were rusty. And we had to go back to some core principles and start looking through the gospel and saying, we're going to equip ourselves to be for discipleship, which is not something that we had necessarily been putting in our narrative. We were really doing a lot of internal work, which is good and positive, but we weren't thinking about that external call and purpose that we're given scripturally. And so I think that's important to have those internal conversations. One of the other things I would say, that I feel like I've said a lot. I apologize for that. I feel like I said quite a bit. And gum. Who says that? It's a movie, like they're making fun of somebody saying and they say and gum. I won't be able to get past it now. Just that challenge for the person in your family. I think that's been something that we were particularly challenged with, is to look within our families. And I think that that's a lot harder sometimes than talking to the person that is what we would consider a neighbor. Because a lot of times family we don't consider as neighbors. What else? What else we got, guys?
Okay. I can relate to a minister said one time that tell your story. Tell how you started, how somebody approached you, and how you became a Christian. That is joyous for you to talk about how you became a Christian, believer. And once you tell them, it's going to come out what you did, how you learned, how you believe. And it don't take 30 minutes, it be maybe 10 minutes, but you're going to be able to, they'll find out what you did, how you became a Christian.
Well, we have 5 minutes left. So want to wrap up with first again saying thank you for all of you coming today and the encouragement that brings to everyone here in the room. And I want to say thank you for those that planned the event, that asked me to come and be here. I know that Rebecca is going to continue this conversation in our next session, and it should. We believe that it will connect. We believe that it will connect. We think there's some connection there, and so we'll move from one to the other. Want to thank again everyone that is in this room that has been mentor to me, and I'm very grateful for each of you here today. And I'll challenge you to walk out of the room today and think about your purpose. I think sometimes as women, when we have conversations like we are during this lectureship, we say that is something that a man needs to do, and that is not what Scripture says. We are called to be disciples. We are called to minister to our communities, and that is our purpose and our goal. So thank you, and I hope you have a great day.
Come in and
Are you okay? Oh, that's a lot.
Just part-time. Just part-time.
I'm a little Christian. Still working in IT at USA.
Yeah, I gotta go back to work. Me too. I'm still I need to get out of there. Is it the credit card you might go just pick a day. Just pick a day. Okay.
Apparently we're all scratching my leg. That is so funny. The whole time Jason and Heather, and they're like, I was like, I'm sorry, church. They were like, I need to do it. Oh my goodness. And I'm like, I'm sorry. You just made my day. I just was gonna pull a white pillowcase out of there and he does it. I don't even do anything special. Okay, I literally was like, oh no, I'm gonna be so sad if I watch her go.
Sit in the corner back here.
Look, in a bigger room, I can carry crazy down there.
Oh, okay. Is that your stuff? That's okay. I'll come sit right here.
I'm done. Rest of it is Terry Cagle. I'll send her down here. too much dust.
Our next speaker. Can y'all hear me? It doesn't sound as
No, it's not.
I turned it off.
Oh, there we go. Of a microphone.
And the microphone loves her.
All right, our next speaker is Rebecca Harrison. She is the wife of J.T. Harrison. They live in Killen, Alabama. Is that right, Killen? She has worked as the director of missions at Heritage Christian University. I should read this instead of ad-libbing. For the past 5 years. In this position, she has afforded many opportunities to speak to women regarding growing their ministries through education. She is also heavily involved in ladies' ministries through Heritage Associates, Radiant Continuing Education for Women, and as an active Killen Church of Christ member. So, without further ado, Becca Harrison.
Y'all know me. Well, let me just start off by saying I'm going to walk away from this microphone. Elizabeth's right. I was so glad when she put up the all the illustration here because I was like, you're going to tee me off. I love this. Yes, I want to say first off, I am not a robust lady speaker like Elizabeth, so get that out of your head. That's fine. Don't worry about that. The thing I do love to do, and I'm loving this title because I think my most favorite thing to do is to meet people. And you all know that about me. That is something that I've always loved to do. And the good thing about when I, with this job that JT and I do together, is that I get to meet a lot of different people. As we go around, I want to bring something back to you that I have learned from going through and meeting all these different people, going to all these different congregations all over the country. That is, we're all alike. There is no church congregation that is better than yours. I want you to know that. And this topic, we are excellent at this. I just want you to know, as women, go ahead and know that you are good at this. Don't begin with a negative thought in your mind, because that's where we break down. That's where we start putting ourselves down. We do an excellent job at this. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about how to love our neighbor. This is something we already do, but we're going to break it down to how it plays out in our lives, how every day. We're just going to uncomplicate things, and we're just going to talk about it. We're going to talk about how this works out in our lives. So first off, we want to talk about who is my neighbor. So it's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for a beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you. So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Won't you please, won't you be my neighbor? We all know where this comes from. It's Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. I was talking to my coworkers and telling them I was going to be doing this lesson. And so one of them said, hey, have you read Mr. Rogers? And I said, no, I've never read Mr. Rogers. Anybody read Mr. Rogers' book? Fantastic book. Love the book. I knew when you were like, I thought Elizabeth's got me. She's going to read that book. So it's a really cool book. And then so he talks about, if you don't know this, I mean, you get it. Like, it's the most wholesome show. It was wonderful. I mean, his neighborhood was perfect. Everybody treated each other well. And if you look at it, it was based on biblical standards. And he taught that. He was, I think he was he Lutheran, Elizabeth? I can't remember but anyway, his background. But he based it on, his ministry was children. So I thought that was very interesting in that background and all that what all went into that show that he put into. Another book I read was Love Does, and it's by Bob Goff. And that's another he just puts it really simple. This is not anything new that God has not already taught us, but it's just a book, just an easy read, a book that helps you to just see it. And it talks about love being in action and how that plays out in our lives. And then the third book I read, I've read a lot of books. Since I have come to North Alabama and my children have gotten out of school, I've read a lot of books. It's been great. It's great to get an education after your children grow up. But but I read The Notice Serve by Andy Andrews. He's one of the authors from Gulf Shores. So who knew that, right? But he talks about becoming aware of what you do to pour into your community and what that part is that you play. So throughout what we talk today, I'm going to be doing some referencing to that book just because it's an easy way to help us understand better of what we're doing and how that's making a difference in people's lives. So knowing who our neighbor is, we're going to start off by reading the parable, the Good Samaritan. Luke 10, 25 through 37. I have it marked and I'm still looking for it. Alright, here we go. Okay. And behold, a certain lawyer stood up and tested him, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? He said to him, What is written in the law? What is your reading of it? So he answered and said, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he said to him, You answered rightly. Do this, and you will live. But he, wanting to justify himself, said to Jesus, And who is my neighbor? And Jesus answered and said, A certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho, and fell among thieves, who stripped him and of his clothing and wounded him, and he departed, leaving him half dead. Now, by chance, a certain priest came by down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Likewise, a Levite, when he arrived at that place, and came and looked and passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came to where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine, and he set him on his own animal, and brought him to an inn, and took care of him. On the next day, when he departed, he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said to him, Take care of him, and whatever more you spend, I will come back again, and I will repay you. So which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to him who fell among the thieves? And he said, He who showed mercy on him. Then Jesus said to him, Go and do likewise. Okay, that's the end of my lesson. I'm just kidding. I mean, Jesus said it, right? What better way? You can't do better than that. And I'm sorry, my throat, I just got over the flu. I mean, like 5 days ago, I got over it. But you know the lingering it does to you. So anyway, so we want to talk about who's our neighbor. So we know that's the person that shows mercy. That's why I'm saying that's easy. Who passes by someone who's wounded and hurting? None of us in this room would pass by someone wounded and hurting. You will chance your life to help someone that is wounded and hurting. That is the most obvious thing in the world when someone is hurting physically. So I believe as Christian women, we do that very well. The challenge is not with those who are hurting obvious. It's those that we don't recognize as hurting. It's the recognition. In loving our neighbors, in loving our neighbors, we have, it requires that effort and the intentionality and kindness that we have. So we have to be very intentional about the things that's not real obvious to us. The things that are obvious to us, those are not hard. But just the intentionality, referring back to what Elizabeth was talking about, we have to think ahead, be ahead of ourselves and be very intentional. That was my word. I have a different word for every year that I try to focus on. And one year it was intentional. And everything was to be intentional about whatever I did. And so this is one of those things that it's carried over for me, that practice, because I think when I'm thinking about doing something or planning, I think I need to be intentional about this. This year is compassion. I need to be compassionate no matter what I do, when I make a decision, be compassionate. When I'm thinking about whatever I'm doing, if I'm making a grocery list and I'm thinking, okay, what can I do to help someone this week? Show compassion. So in every little thing of your life, you think, that's not a big deal. Well, it is. It adds up. So when you think about, when I was talking about Bob, the book Love Does, he goes on to tell you about it being an action. So love is never stationary. Love is not something that stays put. It doesn't just sit there. Love, you can say, I love you all day long, and someone can tell you they love you. And I don't know if you've ever felt that way. I've felt that way before. Someone has told me, I love you, but without action, it's nothing. It means nothing to anyone, and people don't feel love. That's how you know someone loves you. You feel it, but it's more than a feeling. It's an action. So with love without action isn't anything. It's empty. So as we move on, we want to talk about who God calls us to love. So that person is going to be anyone that's hurting anywhere. We don't get to choose. It doesn't matter. There's not a qualification for you to help someone. For me to help somebody, I can't. It doesn't matter that I don't know what they're going to do with their life, or what they're doing with their life, or if they're in sin. All the more, they're your neighbor more than anything. Every person on this earth. It's so huge to think about, but every person is made in the image of God. Every single person on this earth. Even the worst person you can think of that's done the most terrible thing, he's made in the image of God. And do you know, God loves them just as much as he loves me? I think sometimes we get caught up in putting ourselves up here because we're Christians. And we're here, and everybody else is down here. Because, obviously, he loves me more. Hey, I serve him every day. I go to church 3 times a week. I go to lectureships. I work for a Christian university. No, that puts the job on, that's on me. It's actually, he expects more out of me than he does the person that's in the ditch. So, this is where we have to recognize, this is the hard part. This is the nitty gritty. We have to think about all those who are around us. The lesson, like I said, I really don't have to go anymore. The Good Samaritan, he helped a stranger, right? Case in point. He didn't have a qualifier. It was a stranger. That would be just like someone you don't know that shows up on your doorstep. You walk out your door and they're hurting on your driveway. Hey, you're going to stop, right? You're going to help them. Absolutely. Well, we have to think about that in everyday life. And we're going to get around to talking about a little bit of that, more like what Elizabeth was talking about earlier. So, when you think about who you are, who goes around in our daily life, we'll think about people like our coworkers, our family, even our spouse. Oh my word, why does he have to be my neighbor? But, that is like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. But, no, even that, seriously, it's so funny because, I'm in the position I'm now, I'm a boss, and there's a lot of people who retired and have been in these positions, and there are positions like that now, and then just being coworkers, how do you treat those people? You treat those people like you want to be treated. And that's what JT always tells me. He's like, just make the decision you want to be made for you. That's just, you can't go wrong with that. And so it's so simple. It really is. We complicate things. But even he is my neighbor and my coworkers and the person that's standing with at Walmart in line that doesn't have enough money to pay for their groceries. Because you know what? There was a day someone paid for my groceries. And you don't think you'll ever be that person, but you can be. And I'm so glad I have neighbors. And you know, there's also the person that you have an automobile accident with. How do we act when we have an automobile accident? Those people are your neighbors. How do we respond when someone comes to us cursing us out and we've done nothing? How do we respond? We're their neighbor. So I'm thinking, how do I love my neighbor? How do I act as a neighbor? What I want, that comes back to me. Giving enough grace to help someone in their current state. That's huge. When you think about the grace that God gives us, how many times we mess up. I was just talking to Mary Carol. I think she's back in there listening to Brandon. If you don't know Mary Carol, you need to know her. She's a fabulous person. She should be right here speaking and not me. So I was like, what? What are they thinking? She's fabulous. Anyway, she and Brandon are fantastic soul winners. But anyway, so, you know, God's given me this grace when I mess up. When I stand up here and I say something that someone might take offensive, that I didn't intend for it to be offensive. But you know what? God gives me that grace. He's like, oh, there's Rebecca. She needs my grace. And I mean, it's the truth. And you know what? Also, I have this friend named Amber, and most of you know her. But we used to do this thing for each other to help each other. We would start talking, and we'd say, I cannot believe they did that. And then the other one of us would say, because we would never do that. Mercy. That's what mercy is. So that's a really good reminder to myself that when I start thinking, because I'm going to be honest, I'm going to start thinking that way. I don't know. I hope none of you do that in here, but I would lay chances think we probably put a little bit guilty of that. So, but God gives me that mercy. And then I have my Christian sisters who've been merciful to me, have been so merciful to me because I've had some bad days. I was here for 22 years, and these women have loved me beyond my imperfections. And that's called mercy. And that's what the church is all about. And the world will never know what mercy's about unless we show them. Mercy is something that only can come from God's love. Like Elizabeth was talking about, that is the oneness, and that we get to demonstrate that to the world. The world may never see it unless it's through us. Chances are they won't. So we can go through the world and we can say, oh, you know, that's not my kid. That's not my community. That's not my problem. They'll take care of themselves. Well, that's not the world we live in. God has called us to love the world and to get out into the world and love the people of the world, but not to be of the world, but show them God's love. We're blessed that we know that. We're blessed that we get to know that mercy and that grace and His love. I mean, all my life, I've had that all my life. Not a lot of people have that. I've met people in my job, people that are coming to start their ministry that it's brand new to them. And I love that. It's refreshing. It teaches me so many lessons because it tells me how grateful I should be about what I have. I've always had my whole life. So this community is our responsibility. Wherever you live, wherever you go, whoever child's hurting, it is your responsibility to take care of that. Love is a defining characteristic of a Christian. That is the main characteristic we should all have. When someone walks away from us, we may not be the great conversationalist. I may not be the best at grammar. I may not be the best at whatever you're the best at, because that's your job. That is not my job. My job is not to be you, and your job is not to be me. If that was the case, God would have made us all the very same. So get that out of your mind. You are not to be anybody else but just the person God created. Your purpose
is your purpose. You are special. You are beautifully and wonderfully made. And God has created you for your particular thing you do in life. You are important. I love the song Greatest Command. Who doesn't? But that is the best lesson to myself when I hear that song. To me, if love one another, for love is of God. He who loves is born of God and knows God. How can I be born? He who does not love does not know God. To know him is to love. Love bears all things, and it believes all things. Love hopes all things, endures all things. God is love. Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy strength, and with all thy mind. Love the Lord thy God with all your heart. Love the Lord thy God with all of your heart. That song is a beautiful reminder of what we're supposed to be doing every day. And if we're not loving our neighbor, then we're not doing what God has commanded us to do. The practical ways to be a good neighbor. Oh man. So Galatians 5:13 tells us that we should serve one another humbly in love. And we going right back to true love is an action. It's not something that you say. It's not something that you feel. It's something that you do. So do not forget to do good and to share with others. Hebrews 13:16 tells us that. There's everyday opportunities to serve. One of the words that I kept hearing Elizabeth say and other people that were talking was opportunities. Opportunities, opportunities, opportunities. That needs to be your word for the year. That needs to be my word for next year. But opportunities. You need to think about opportunities everywhere you go. Think about that constantly. Pray for that every day. God, give me opportunities to help someone. God, give me opportunities to see those opportunities. Mr. Rogers' simple yet profound acts of kindness. He did things like visited children, wrote them letters, and he listened deeply. One of the things that he said that I thought I had to bring this quote to the class. He says there are 3 ways to ultimate success. The first way is to be kind. The second way is to be kind. And the third way is to be what? Kind. It's simple put. In Matthew 25:35, God tells us that if we don't do it to the least of these, we've not done it to him. We will be questioned about that. So opportunities, that's what we're looking for. There are many biblical examples of doing it now. That's one of those things that, it's hard sometimes with procrastination. I'm a procrastinator. I hate procrastination, but I do it. It's terrible. But it's, I think it's the devil. It has to be if it's negative, right? But that procrastination of, I'm going to do that one day, and we need to get a plan together, and I need to talk to some people so we can get together and we can get this figured out, right? No. Do it now. Do it now. Pray with them now. If you say, I want to pray, I'm going to pray for you, you know when the best time to pray for them is? Right then. You take a moment. If you don't have time to pray, you don't have time for anything. You may not get your next breath. Pray. Pray with them now. It means a lot. I've had people do that for me. Pray on the phone with your sisters. Do it. Pray for those people that are out there that are not Christians. They will be wowed by that. And you know what they will feel? Loved. Amazing. The best example I can see in the Bible, there's several examples, but I'm going to talk forever, so obviously I need to speed on. The disciples dropping their nets in Matthew 4:18-22. Jesus called Peter, Andrew, James, and John. They immediately, that's what it says, immediately left their fishing nets to follow him. That is the best example. You've got Boaz providing for Ruth. He saw her, out there gleaming in the fields, and he immediately offered her protection and provision. Elisha helping the widow. All these stories. Jesus healing the sick. Immediately he heals Peter's mother-in-law when he entered the house and saw she was ill. The woman of blood. Her faith. Man, it's amazing. I love that story. So those are things we talk about when it's, we're talking about people that are, strangers. People that we don't, that necessarily that we don't know them and they don't know us, and we're just doing random acts of kindness, right? That feels good. Feels good to do those kind of things. Well, what about our enemies? And those people who are out to get you. What about those people? Are we supposed to be their neighbor? Well, we know the answer, right? Is yes. God says in Matthew 5:43-44, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. This is, for me, a radical call for love. It's getting me outside of my comfort zone. That is so hard, to look in the eyes of someone who you know has hurt you. But that's the very person that needs your love. It's a radical love because it's God's love. When you can do that, you can do anything. I'm not telling you I have the answers. I'm telling you that I know it is possible. And it is a command. And the way we respond to them, in Romans 12:18-21 says, if it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. And that doesn't say you will live at peace with everyone. It says as far as it depends on you, what you do. Can you control what other people do? No, absolutely not. The only person you can handle is yourself. So don't worry about what other people do. Worry about you. So that's my 2 cents worth on that. Well, that's what the Bible says. So, Mr. Rogers' approach, he said that we speak more than our mouths, more than with our mouths, and we listen with more than our ears. Different ways to show yourself as a neighbor. I think this is a beautiful example of loving even when it's hard, and that is loving the way you look at people, the way you listen to people, your mannerisms around people. Those speak, and you may think, oh, I'm not doing anything, or I'm not brave enough to go up and approach someone and ask them to study the Bible with me. But you know what? If you are kind to them, sometimes that's all you can do. That's your bravery. That's your kindness. That's your love. That's God's love shining through. But I'm going to draw all this together, and y'all are just going to be so proud of yourselves. Because I have good news for y'all. As soon as I get a drink of water. Okay, it all depends on us. We do this. Be kind and compassionate to one another, Ephesians 4:29-32. Encouraging and creating an atmosphere of encouragement and opportunities. Okay, so you think you do this much, right? We all do that much. Honestly, we do that much. I know one of the great things that we did here, and we're still doing it at Central, is Monday Night for the Master. And there's other ministries like that, but that was just our particular one. It woke us up to realize that what we did mattered. And I have a story to tell you, and it's really cool. George Washington. It's about George Washington Carver all the way down, but in Bob Goff's book, Notice Her, he tells the story. And he was trying to convince a lady that she was in an older age, and she was saying, I don't have any purpose. You know, God, I don't even know why God's let me stay on this earth. Like, I'm old. Like, I'm living off Social Security, and I can't do anything. It makes me, little old me. I'm used up. I'm tired. And he's told her the story. And let me see if I can read it here. He told her that Norman Borlaug, at age 91, was responsible for saving 2 billion lives by creating hybridized corn and wheat for arid climates. But the person, he said, that really made that possible was Henry Wallace. He was the Vice President of the United States under Roosevelt, and he was a former Secretary of Agriculture. While in office, he used his power of that office to create a station in Mexico whose sole purpose was to hybridize corn and wheat for arid climates. Well, he happened to hire a man by the name of Henry Wallace. So he went on and while in office, he used that power. Okay, so he hired a young man by the name of, Henry Wallace was the, okay, yeah, so I told y'all we're going to get this messed up. Henry Wallace was the vice president that created the place for how to create the act. And then he hired a man by the name of Norman Borlaug. So Henry hired Herman. So she's like, oh, that is so cool. Like, that's the real reason. Okay, because what's what he did. But he said, wait a minute. He said, actually, maybe it was George Washington Carver. And she was like, you've got to be kidding me. And he was like, no. He was like, he was a college student. As a college student, he went on this trip, and his professor's 6-year-old son went with him. And he spent all this time with this 6-year-old, and he helped him develop this love of plants and study of plants. And so this kid grew up, and what did he do? He studied agriculture. And so that kid's name, Henry Wallace. Cool things. So then, George Washington, the neatest thing, and you probably know this, George Washington Carver, his mother was Mary Washington, and she was a slave she was not a slave. She would have been treated like a slave, but she was being protected in the home, on the property of Susan and Moses Carver. And when the people that did not believe in slavery, they came by and they burned their barns, and they took Mary, and Mary clung to her son George, and so she took him with her. So Susan and Mary were best friends, and so Moses, he went to get her. Well, when he went to get him, she was dead. Mary was dead, but they threw George to him in a sack. And so Moses traded his only horse for that child's life. He put the child, it was very cold that night, and he put him inside. The baby was naked, and he put the baby inside his clothes next to his skin. And on his way home, he promised him that he would take care of him and that he would give him his last name to honor his mother. So tell me, who's responsible for saving those 2 billion people? We are all responsible for saving souls. You think what you do does not matter. But I'm here to tell you it does. And you don't have to know, because God does. You don't have to know what the end result's going to be, because God does. When you create a community of opportunities and encouragement, this is what you're doing. So I want to be someone that somebody wants to be around. Do you? We all do. We want to be that kind of person. To be able to, let's see, who is it? Which book that I got that from? This idea. But anyway, I didn't come up with any of this. It's from a book. But that's where knowledge is, right? So, but if you want to be the person that everybody wants to be around, ask yourself if you could ask someone else, what's one thing they would change about you? And, we don't want to know, do we? I don't, yeah. But do I want people to be around me? I do. And the one thing that's going to make people want to be around me is if I'm an encouragement and I give them opportunities. If I'm a person that concentrates on the positive things of life, of encouragement, of being an encourager, and to being able to give opportunities to other people, people are going to want to be around me. They're going to say, you know what? She's good. I want to get next to Rebecca because she's going to tell me I look good today, whether I look good or not. And hey, I'm going to tell you, God sends people to me on bad hair days. He just sends people to me on bad hair days. I'm just going to tell you. So, when I have felt my worst, at my worst, I promise you there is someone that comes and picks me up. So don't tell me that it doesn't matter what you do, because it does. It matters a lot. But by creating this encouragement and opportunities, what you do is you start planting this in other people. You plant these little seeds in people all around you. And you know what's all of a sudden? Everybody around you are encouraged. And they see themselves having opportunities. And then they start developing themselves as that kind of person. And then all of a sudden, what do you have? You have created a community of encouragement. And you know, that's a really beautiful place to live. It's almost like that's what God intended, right? I mean, that's what He wants us to do. He wants us to build up each other. So, as we close today, I want you to think about who in your life, let me think about who in my life, my neighbor, that I think I need to love more intentionally. Just concentrate on that. It goes right along with Elizabeth's challenge. I thought, we studied this together or something. But we were reading the same book, Elizabeth. I mean, who knew? So you challenge yourself to that one person that you know could just really need that more intentional attention from you, that encouragement, and give them opportunities to serve alongside of you. Give them opportunities to be in your presence so that you can love them. Our closing scripture will be 1 Corinthians 16:14. And this is basically our charge. Let all that you do be done in love. Thank you.